get the demo going shortly.
Yeah, cool. Good morning, everybody in person, and also we have a live Instagram going on. But feel free to come in. You're not blocking the video, so feel free. So that makes it easier for Eytan not to scream. I think. So welcome to our factory here, STEELPORT Knife Co. Thank you for taking the time this morning. I'm Ron Kormai. I'm a founder and CEO of STEELPORT. And you're standing in STEELPORT factory. I always tell people it feels special to have a sharpening and knife demo on a place that actually makes knives. I keep in my mind keeps thinking about like going to prayer in Vatican City or something like that. You know, you just have to go here, and so it's very special type thing. A little bit of logistics before we get to the today's. As I mentioned, you're in the factory, so feel free after the session or later, stop anybody with STEELPORT shirt and get a tour of our factory while you're here. If you have never been here, we make 7 styles of knives and accessories all here with a U.S. source, locally made. And your factory is also open and store is open 9 to 5 daily, Monday through Saturday. So that's kind of the background. If again, being on the factory floor. The other thing is that this is our this session kicks off our monthly demos. That's the second year that we're doing full year. So at the last Saturday of every month from 11 to 12, which is right now, we have a great local experts coming in and doing a demo, chef demo. And most of the time is local chefs. We are blessed in Portland to have a lot of James Beard Award winners and great chefs. So it's an opportunity to bring them here 1 hour to get experience in a one-on-one type thing. So we're going to turn it over. So let me do a quick introduction. I think most of you guys know Eytan, but he's also my business partner and co-founder of STEELPORT and the Bladesmith for STEELPORT. So has many titles. His business card takes too much to put on the thing, but it's such a treat to have get a chance to actually see him sharpening, going through the development. Obviously today is not meant to be, you guys are not meant to be walking outside and start sharpening your knives perfectly off the bat, but at least gives you an idea of what goes into the sharpening. But the part I'm excited about these sessions is opportunity to hear from Eytan, that's over 25 years of experience making knives, sharpening knives, selling knives. And also the fact that he started, I keep telling you, he started as a kind of a box boy before he became a chef and good stuff. So he has seen what does it take to do hard work and get calluses from using knife to actually using culinary and other stuff. So it gives them more than just mechanics of the knife sharpening. It's actually why you use the sharp culinary knife. And that's one reason we are focused on culinary rather than expanding to a bunch of other types of knives. So I'm excited about that. Just another reminder, we are here as Eytan goes through. It's been kind enough to bring actually sharpening stones and things like that. So if you want any of those cares, honing rods, and everything else we have are all for sale as well today. So feel free to again grab Eytan or anybody else at the end. With that, let me turn over why we are all here. All right. So, Eytan.
All right, everybody. You guys are welcome to come up front too. Once more important, once I start actually doing the demo, so everybody can see and everything. Yeah. So as Ron said, yeah, my name's Eytan. I've been working with knives pretty much my entire life. I'm self-taught in sharpening, knife making, everything. It just kind of all started from a love of cooking, and I consider myself more of a food guy than a knife guy. My interest in knives as knives as they relate to food, right? So even though my focus is culinary, I'm sure people here are into other things, right? So if anybody's into sharpening, axes or shears or straight razors, or we can touch on all that. At the end of the demo, you guys can ask me any questions you guys have. Anything specific that you guys are interested in, we can touch on that. And what I like to do is I like to teach on just a double-sided kitchen knife. And once you understand sharpening, you can then apply it to any other tool, right? So this is this knife will kind of cover everything that you need to know about sharpening, and then you can just apply it to other tools. And you guys can ask me today, but you guys can use this as a resource indefinitely, right? And the reason that we are not doing our hands-on classes right now is, they were scheduled for 3 hours. They always ran 4. And basically the important part is the first hour. It's the most boring part. It's all the information that you need to know, how to select stones, knife construction as it relates to sharpening, the technique, all the do's and don'ts. There's a lot of information that you need to know. So nothing is going to replace the repetition and the practice of sharpening. And we like to say that sharpening is a hobby before it's a skill, because nobody just goes straight to a stone and is able to just put an edge on it unless you're just an absolute savant. And if that's the case, I have a job for you. Come see me afterwards. But you have to, you have to spend a few days, a few hours, just actually, trial and error, building up that muscle memory. Nothing's going to replace that. So we switched to this format. So hopefully today you guys are going to leave with all the information, all the tools that you guys need in order to sharpen. And then when you guys are sharpening, then you come see me or any one of my guys. And then once you show us an edge, show us a knife that you sharpen, we can, feel your edge, look at your scratch patterns. Any one of us can just look at that, diagnose what's going right or wrong, what you can do better, what's going well, what isn't. Right? So before you have something to show us, it's just a impossibly large conversation, which you guys will see today is going to be a lot of information thrown at you. Right? But use us as a resource. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to be a customer. And I should mention today I'm wearing 2 hats. So I'm the co-founder Bladesmith here, but I also have the Portland Knife House on Belmont, and that's my sharpening service. And there's 4 of us that sharpen there. You can go in there anytime, show your knife to any one of us, and we're all pretty, used to diagnosing and advising. Again, you don't have to be a customer in order to take advantage of us, of that advice at least. Got that in there. So, all right. So, what I'm going to be showing you today is how we actually sharpen. All right. So we do our hand sharpening in front of the customers at the shop. So when you go into the shop, you'll see us doing the exact method that I'm teaching you guys today. This is the fastest, most precise, most efficient way that I know of how to sharpen a knife. We average 120 knives a day at the shop for sharpening. And if there was a faster way to do it, believe me, we would be doing it, because time is money, right? And this is constantly changing. We're constantly learning. We're trying new things. We're talking to other people, and they're teaching us. If you guys, if I did this demo 10 years ago, it would have been completely different. If I do it 10 years from now, it's going to be completely different. Okay, so this is how we sharpen today. Hopefully, we'll just keep on getting better and better. So we encourage everybody to do their own sharpening. It is the only way for you to always have a sharp knife. All right, you can take any tool that you have. It doesn't have to be a great knife. It just has to be a decent piece of steel. And maintenance is absolute key. We usually tell people, when they're looking at knives, we don't care about, factory edges. Some shops will let you cut with the knife. Doesn't matter. Some of our best knives, our most traditionally made Japanese knives, $1,000 knife comes with no edge on it whatsoever. You will absolutely hate it first cut, right? Some inexpensive knives come with really aggressive edges that some people like. So if you use both knives, first cut, you'll be like, oh, this knife is way better. Well, guess what? You just hone it, it evens everything out, and then you'll see what comes out, right? So a quality knife is going to sharpen better, it's going to stay sharper longer, and so on. So, the same thing is if, I show somebody a knife and they're like, oh, my buddy at work has it, I used it and I don't like it, right? How is he maintaining that knife, right? That's the most important thing, right? Because if you give somebody a crappy knife and they know how to sharpen, they'll get great results with it. Or if you give somebody a good knife and they don't know how to sharpen, then they will not, right? We also tell people, I see a couple professionals here today. Any cooks here? Right on. Yep. So, we also tell people it doesn't matter what position a person has, right? Cooking and sharpening are 2 different skills. So I used to teach at culinary schools too. And, I teach the students how to do it. And then next time I see them, I'm like, oh, how's the sharpening going? And they're like, oh, well, my chef saw me sharpening and he yelled at me and said I was doing it wrong. And I was like, okay, well, are his knives sharp? And they're like, no, he's always borrowing mine, right? So what does that tell you about, right, sharpening skills? So you listen to a person that has sharp knives. So if it's the prep cook or the dish guy or, any person that has a sharp knife, you listen to them. Cooking and sharpening are completely different skills. So the reason that I like people to do their own sharpening is, again, it's the only way that you can have a perfectly sharp knife all the time. You will get a lot more longevity out of your knife, just as far as years, right? Because most people come in, this knife has no edge on it. That's why I'm playing with it. So most knives come into us, they have no edge on them whatsoever. When they come in like that, we have to remove a lot of steel in order to put an edge back on it. So it sounds almost counterintuitive, but the more often you sharpen your knife, the less steel you're removing in the long run, right? Because if you bring me in a knife like that, I have to start coarse. I have to grind a whole new edge on it. I'm removing a lot more steel, as opposed to proper knife maintenance, as far as I'm concerned, like as far as a best practice, is you just don't let your knife get dull in the first place. Second, it hesitates on a tomato. It's the most difficult thing to cut. Then you take whatever your finest method, if it's a strop, if it's a ceramic honing rod, if it's a polishing stone, you go straight to that, do a few strokes just to bring your edge back without taking off a lot of steel, and then you just keep going that way. Okay. So when I say I'm self-taught, but in culinary school back in the day, we did have our obligatory 20-minute sharpening demo. We were taught on those old tri-stones that are, relics at this point, but, they had the 3 sides on them. And we were always taught every time you sharpen your knife, you go coarse, medium, fine. Right? Absolutely incorrect. Because our job as sharpeners, as knife owners, is to remove the least amount of steel possible. And then if you always go coarse, medium, fine, you're just taking off steel for no reason. It goes actually the opposite, right? So if I'm finishing on a strop, when I don't like my edge, I go to the strop, right? When that stops working, I go to my finest stone. If that's not enough, I go to my sharpening stone. I try to avoid coarser grits as much as I can. All right. So we're going to talk about all this stuff. First thing I want to do is I'm just going to sharpen a knife real quick. If anybody hasn't seen knife sharpening on a stone, then you might not have that visual in your head necessary. So when I'm talking about the rest of the boring stuff, you guys don't know how it relates. So I'm going to dive into this deeper. I'm going to explain what I'm doing. But right now I'm just going to sharpen a knife so you guys can see what it entails. And this is a knife that has no edge on it whatsoever. Okay, it's been ground off professionally. Can't cut myself. It is a knife-shaped object. I need to get it to cut again. All right, so I'm just going to start sharpening. I can answer other questions, but as far as technique and all that stuff, we're just going to dive in a lot deeper right after this.
How do you tell the angle that you're sharpening?
Oh, we're going to get into that for sure. Yeah.
What kind of stone are you using?
So so this is a 400 grit Naniwa Chaucera, or professional stone. And this is by far my favorite line of stones. I don't find I need to go anything coarser than this except for any kind of major repairs.
Is there a certain country that's the best thing?
Japan, and Japan. Yeah. I like to say when we're talking about, stones and knives and all that stuff, that you don't have to, if it's a German knife, it doesn't necessarily have to be made in Germany, or a Japanese knife doesn't necessarily have to be made in Japan, because those are styles. But nobody has come close to the Japanese as far as making stones yet. We've been looking, all right. So, I don't know, for about a minute on the stone. So we went from no edge whatsoever after about a minute. So now we're cutting paper, which is, well, you'll do better than this, all right? Because this is the end result for a lot of people, but this is not what we're looking for. So the reason this is not satisfactory to me is because it's not a very clean cut. I have to use more pressure than I want to, and it's loud. All right, so that tells me cutting paper on its own is not a test of sharpness, but it is a tool to learn what your edge, like where the edge is at. Right. So keep going. Go up grit.
What type of steel is that?
This is a white steel. Japanese white steel, laminated, yeah, stainless clad white steel. It's a $40 knife. Fantastic. Just we use these for our classes and demos and everything. Again, I've been a professional sharpener for almost 20 years now, so I hope I would make it look easy anyway, but I choose knives that are, I wouldn't start sharpening something like this because it would take me a long time and it would make me look bad, right? I used to just go in places and be like, hey, somebody give me a knife and I'll show you how to sharpen. But then, some guy with a 50-year-old bowed-out Dexter Russell will throw one at me and be like, oh, God, it defeats the purpose. So then, so then I make sure that I pick knives. It has to be a hard steel, has to be a thin blade, and carbon's going to, sharpen better. So that's the knives I pick for demo purposes, for classes. All right. So another minute or so on the stones. This is normally a 2-minute process, and then we went from, I'll just do it over here, to a knife with no edge to a knife that's shaving sharp, right? Nothing I would shave my face with. You know, I have to go at least about 8,000 grit for that. This is 800 grit. But that's the next test is, you know, again, you know, shaving hair, step up from cutting paper, and just like anything, I can see how cleanly it shaves. Does it, you know, does it irritate me? Can I just crop hair? So again, knife with no edge. A couple minutes later, we got a knife that will slice everything that you want to slice. All right, and I like to yeah, stop at 800 grit because most people think that you have to go, you know, fine polish in order to do all this stuff, and you don't. It's technique is key, and then we'll talk about what the grits do after that. All right. So that is knife sharpening. Just as far as visually, that's what I do. My personal knives at home, I don't spend any more time than this, right? Not every knife is as easy to sharpen as one of these guys, but I don't wait until my knives are that dull. So I literally spend a minute or two on my knives. First sharpening on any knife is going to be significant because you have to establish your own, you know, angles and, you know, especially if it's a, you know, factory edge and you're going to a hand edge and everything. So first sharpening on a knife is always longer, but once you have your angles on it, it should be a quick process like this, unless there's some kind of damage to it. All right, so I'm gonna try to fly through this stuff, and then we'll talk about it more as if, you know, if it comes up, if it's relevant, if you guys have questions about it, because I want to focus mostly on technique today. I usually get bogged down in these kind of details and don't sharpen enough. So we'll just touch on when we ask people if they do their own sharpening, a lot of people say yes, and they're talking about these guys. So very important distinction. Most of you guys know this. There is sharpening and there is honing. And sharpening is when you remove steel. So if you give me a dull knife, I can remove steel and get it sharp. Honing is when you just realign your edge. You're knocking off burrs. You're kind of folding your edge back into something that looks like an edge. If you give me a dull knife and one of these guys, your classic metal honing rod, I would not be able to sharpen a knife on this, okay, unless it's a really soft steel, right? So these are relics. If you have softer steels like German knives, stuff like that, you can still use these. It's better than not using anything, but I would never recommend anybody go and buy one of these. Kind of like the Tri-Stone or the German knife in general. These are relics. These are outdated. They haven't caught up to modern steels and techniques. So butchering's different because you have to, right? So, you know, ceramic's the best thing for your knife. You can't use these in a butcher shop because they have regulations that it has to be steel. It has to have a synthetic handle. You can't use wooden handles. You can't use carbon steels. So everything has to have a certain chromium content. It has to be able to run through a sanitizer. And the way the butchers cut is they, you know, they'll do a few cuts, you know, they basically use it all day. Yeah. So they want something that they also use softer steels, you know, like FDix, Victorinox, stuff like that are going to run like low 50s. So they use pretty smooth steels and they run them all day, and that way they're not taking off a ton of steel. Yeah. Which brings me to there are honing rods that do remove some steel. Your diamond steel is technically an abrasive, so it is a sharpening method, but it is a very poor sharpening method. You have just a single layer of abrasive. It's very aggressive, leaves you a toothy edge. I would only use this on knives I don't care about, but it is a tool, and you're going to wear this out super quick, and your edge is not a quality edge. If you're going to use a honing rod, which if you're not doing stone sharpenings, you have to have at least a honing rod. A lot of people use it in tandem with their stones, especially if you cook for a living. If you're in the middle of service, your knife's not sharp, you're not taking out a stone and sharpening in the middle of service, but I can take this out of my kit and just do a few, strokes to bring my edge back. Right? So ceramic is by far the best thing for your knife. If you're going to use a honing rod, it has the finesse of the steel one. You can see that there's black on it. It is exposing a little bit of fresh metal, but it leaves you a very fine edge. So this is, if you know how to sharpen, you're going to use these differently than if you don't know how to sharpen. So I'm going to come back to these at the end. And then, and I'll show you how you can apply the techniques from stones to your honing rods and get much better results from that. All right. So as far as actual sharpening, if you're not using, again, at least a Japanese style stone, you're basically not doing it right. You see a lot of people use these diamond stones. These stones wear out super quickly. So it's kind of like the, diamond honing rod. It has a synthetic abrasive on it, diamond or CBN, and it is a single layer of abrasive on a smooth piece of steel. As if I use this for my sharpening service, I can't get a single day's use out of this. So this is a $90, $100 stone. I cannot get a day's use out of a diamond. So, right, as opposed to a standard like a Japanese style water stone, we get about 6 months use out of this, and this is a less expensive stone. So I don't like diamond stones. I use these if I'm traveling. I have one of these for emergencies. Again, somebody gives me that really worn out blade. I don't want to look bad. I don't have my machinery with me, so I'm going to start on something like this. But they're great for maintenance on your regular stones, which we're going to talk about in a second. So the reason that we like the Japanese style stone as opposed to a diamond stone or your standard oil stone that you will go buy at the hardware store, that is just an abrasive that's sintered together, right? And you round out the abrasive. When you use the abrasive, you're killing it, and it's not exposing any fresh abrasive. And then it can't be resurfaced properly, so you're killing the stone, you're dishing it out, and there's not much you can do to fix it, right? The Japanese style stone, this is an abrasive in a binder, and the abrasive's better, right? So you get more cutting power out of it. But the idea is as you're wearing out the abrasive, the binder breaks down and releases fresh abrasive all the time, right? So this stone started off like this, right? This one broke. That's the problem. When they get too thin, then they're just very delicate. But we use stones until they look like a sheet of paper, basically. And using this is exactly the same as using this, right? So all you do is you keep this. It's a renewable abrasive, and then based on your type of abrasive, they're going to wear faster or slower. That's kind of when it comes into stone quality. But you can get the most out of these stones. Again, we go through a coarse stone every 6 months, medium stone once a year. It takes us 2 or 3 years to go through a polishing stone normally. That is a couple of lifetimes for a home user, right? Even if you're sharpening for family and friends and stuff like that, you guys are never going to go through a stone probably. So that's what makes these so much better, so much more efficient, is all you do is you just keep surfacing these, and then you can, and then you use them until they're done. So this is called a stone fixer, a stone flattener, or a lapping stone. Every time I sharpen, I'm just going to run it on here, make sure my stone's flat, keep my corners down so they don't get too, stones can't chip. So if you want to keep them more durable, you keep your corners chamfered. And and every time I sharpen, I'm going to use this. People always think it's an upsell when they buy a stone. We're like, you should get a flattener. This $20, flattener lets you use all your stones completely through, right? And we've never gone through a flattener in the history of the shop. We've been open for 20 years now almost. We've never gone through a flattener again. So these are inexpensive, things. A stone starts at about $25. This is, $22. Save you a lot of money in the long run. The hand sharpening is expensive, at least, for us. We charge $15 a blade. That adds up pretty quickly versus you guys doing your own maintenance.
Use that prior to sharpening or after?
So sometimes during. So if I had to sharpen all of these, I would stop, you know, probably 3 times in the process and reflatten all my stones. Right? And the reason is, one, you want to expose that fresh abrasive, but we can't use 100% of our stone evenly. So it's going to dish out in the middle here. It's going to start looking like a half pipe, and then you can't get a crisp edge if you don't have a flat stone. It's just going to unintentionally convex your edge. Yeah. And then so we just do it visually normally, because for knife sharpening, if it looks flat, it is flat as far as we're concerned. I'm also a shear sharpener. I do the Japanese salon shears. It's a whole other profession. When we do that, everything has to be super exact. If I'm doing, you know, straight razors, everything has to be super exact. So in that case, if I want to make sure it's super flat, I'll just take a pencil and I'll draw a grid on my stone, and then I'll run the flattener on it. And if I still see any pencil marks, then I know that I have a low spot, and then I need to keep flattening the rest of the stone to catch up with that. But my pencil marks are gone, so I know my stone's flat. Right? So yeah, that's important with stuff that you're doing. If you're doing, I would say, if you're doing chisels, planer blades, you know, salon shears, razors, you want to make sure that you're really, really flat. You might not even want to use one of these because these dish out, and then you will go to diamond. And that is what diamond is good for. So diamond is good for flattening your water stones. If you use this just for flattening, you know, it's a lot quicker, and you're not going to wear this out by just flattening on a stone, unless you're trying to flatten other diamond or CBN stones on them.
So can you use water with a diamond?
Yeah. Yeah, you use water with everything. We use no oil. On these stones, oil will just clog your pores, and the stone stops working after that. And yeah, so there's no reason to use oil anymore. It's just messy. And then for a lot of people who just sharpen with these, a lot of times they won't even use water. They'll use Windex for some reason. But yeah, I don't know why. Never figured that out.
Would you continue doing that, or would you, is there a way of cleaning it?
So you can boil them. So that's the only way. Yeah. So, but if you have an oil stone, you probably want to keep using oil on it. Yeah. So there's oil stones and there's water stones, and none are both, right? I have seen people switch to water after a lot of years, just because the stone is so saturated with oil that it's not going to absorb it anymore, and then you can just put it on there. It's just not going to absorb oil or water anymore because it's fully saturated, so you can do that. But if you have like a clay stone, like a traditional Japanese stone that absorbs, that is very absorbent, if I accidentally spilled oil here, it would suck through to the back of it, and then I have a dead spot. And then the only way to fix it is you basically just simmer it and try to melt the oil out. And it's you know, you can crack your stone. Just don't get oil in it. That's the best thing. But yeah, as far as do I flatten before or after or during? So during, if I need to, right? I usually flatten before I sharpen. Because for these polishing stones, I like to use this the same color as the stone, so it doesn't work. But you guys can see this. You know, this is a slurry, so this is a fine powder that's coming off the stone. Here, I'll do it on this one. So a lot of people use a slurry stone, or what's called a Nagura stone, and this is just to clean your stone and raise some mud on it, raise a slurry. But if you use these, you're going to have a different stone, a different Nagura stone for every grit that you have, or you're just mixing grits. Also, I don't find these effective because you have to flatten anyway. So if I just flatten before I go, then I can leave the slurry on. This creates slurry from the stone that you're using. So you don't need another accessory, and you're not mixing grits. So with finer grits, anything 3000 and up, I usually flatten before I sharpen, and I leave it on there. And then that keeps your stone from loading up quickly, hits all your high spots and low spots because you have grit sitting on top of grit. So it just makes it look better. Um, as far as grits go, so sharpening at its basic, we have control over two things when we're sharpening knives. So teeth and angles. Angles is how you hold, we'll talk about that, what angle you hold it to the stone. And the other thing is the teeth of it, right? So do you like a polished edge, do you like a toothy edge, something in between. We control that by the size of the abrasive. So a coarser stone is going to have a larger abrasive in it, and therefore it is going to dig deeper into the steel, right? So it's going to scratch deeper, and then when your edge meets, it's going to look like this, all right? And if you have a finer stone, finer until you get into, in theory, a full polish, which doesn't exist. We can get these beautiful mirror finishes, 12,000 grit. You look at it under a microscope, everything looks a mess out of it. But visually to us, we call it a mirror finish because it reflects at us, and yeah. So the coarser the stone, it's going to be more efficient, but it's going to leave you a more aggressive edge. Knife sharpeners agree about absolutely nothing. Except for one thing, and that is a coarser edge will cut longer, will last longer than a polished edge. That's the only thing that we agree on. If I had another knife sharpener standing next to me, he would be shaking his head this entire talk, right? We all think we do it the best, and we have our own techniques, and we all believe it. So, but yeah, that's the only thing that we agree on. So some people, they'll show us the sharpening and they'll be like, well, it gets sharp, but it doesn't last as long as I want to. So we usually tell them, if there's nothing wrong with the knife technique, just drop down one grit and you'll see that your edge will stay sharper for longer. Right? And that's why I like to stop at a medium grit and show you can, do any test that you want with the medium grit if your technique is good. Below 400 grit, these all sound like made up numbers, but it's industry standard. So say up until 320 grit, that is extra coarse. That is strictly for major repairs. Big chips, regrinds, reprofiles, all that stuff. Nothing that you're going to do in the course of regular sharpening is going to require a stone that coarse. You are taking off a lot of steel, and you're not saving time because the cleanup after that to take out those scratches is way longer than you would on just using a medium grit stone. All right. So avoid anything below 400. 400 to 600 is a great tool if you're sharpening very dull knives. If you tend to take out a lot of chips, then that is a great tool to use. And if you know what you're doing, you can remove steel. You can remove just the right amount of steel if you know when to stop. We'll talk about that. Not a necessity. The only necessity is a 1,000 grit stone. All right, and everything 800 to 1,500 we call 1,000 grit. It's a medium grit stone. It's the only stone that you can start and finish a blade on. So if you're going to have one stone, it's going to be 1,000 grit. If you have 10 stones, one of them is going to be 1,000 grit. No way of avoiding these. It's the only thing that you have to have. It's a medium grit stone and a stone flattener. Right? Everything else is based on specific needs or preferences. But if you have these two stones, you can sharpen anything, you can do anything. The rest is just, technique. And you can add a million different, accessories and stuff to your sharpening that will make it more convenient or improve it. But if you cannot produce a good edge on a medium grit stone, then you got to look back at your technique and fix that first. Polishing starts at around 3,000 grit and goes up as high as you can imagine. People think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of polishing stones. People think that if their medium grit edge is not good, they're going to automatically get a polishing stone and produce a sharper edge on it. It works the opposite way. Polishing stones are less forgiving. You have to have better technique to use them. And they don't magically make it sharper. So if your technique is bad, a medium grit stone will just cut you a new edge if your angle's off. If your angle is off on a polishing stone, it's not aggressive enough to cut a new edge. It's just going to dull what you're doing. Call it over polishing. So it's very easy to over polish. And, my most overused joke is that it's like if you guys have seen Spinal Tap, it is like the amp that goes up to 11, right? So but it goes up to 11, right? So my sharpening sucks at 6,000, I'm going to get an 8,000. My sharpening sucks at 8,000, I'm going to get a 12,000, so on, right? No, fix your technique, work on the basics, then you can get great edges with that. As far as, sharpening, you're going to customize your edges to how you cook. Some of you guys just want longevity, durability. You guys are going to have, bigger angles, toothier edges. Some people want more finesse. They're going to have low angles, polished edges. That is strictly preference. It is a tool. How you use your tool is up to you. There's no right or wrong. But you guys can, I can give 5 people the same knife and get 5 different results, right? This can perform a million different ways based on how you want to do it. So I think that's kind of the beauty of doing your own sharpening too, is you guys can tailor your edges to the way you cut. And not every knife that I have has the same edge on it because I use it for different purposes, right? My slicer, I keep super low angles on it. It's barely even touching the cutting board, so I can put really delicate, really high polish, really sharp edges on it because it's not getting, dinged up, right? My pocket knife, I keep a super coarse edge on it or no edge on it because I'm destroying it all day. I'm just cutting through, I see Nate looking at me right now, but yeah, because I'm just cutting boxes and scraping metal with it and doing all kind of stuff you shouldn't be doing with one. I destroy them, so I don't even bother. Like, I would never put this edge on it because I'll ruin it in about a day. All right, so that is the grits, right? So it's up to you guys to decide where you want to go. Your knives will determine also what you can do with them. Sometimes there are limitations based on steels and geometry and all that. And then as far as stones, again, Japanese the way to go. I haven't found anything else. We try to recommend American products if we can. No one has gotten there with stones. Your 2 major types of stones are your man-made and your natural stones. I'm not going to waste time talking about natural stones. They do nothing better than the man-made stones. There's a coolness factor to it, and that's about where it stops. So they're expensive, they're unpredictable, they take a much higher level of proficiency to use. They're all different. There is nothing that a natural stone is going to do better than a man-made stone. And you can spend a lot of money on these stones, right? So I'm not going to talk about those anymore. Your man-made stones, your 2 main types are your clay stones, and that is the most traditional. I'll dip it in water, it's already drying up, right? So these are very thirsty. They absorb water. If I use them often, I can just keep them in water and it won't hurt them, and they're always ready to go. If not, I'm going to drop them in about 15-20 minutes before I sharpen. If they keep absorbing water, they keep drying up, I cannot use these. You have to have water as a lubricant and just to float the grit so it doesn't get stuck in your stone. All right. So easiest test in the world. If it absorbs water, soak it. If it doesn't, don't. Because if I leave, right, so these do not absorb water. If I leave these in water permanently, they will soften up a little bit. So there's no reason to do it. So don't do that. These are just industry names, kind of like carbon and stainless, right? Some stainless has as much carbon as what we call carbon steel. We call these clay stones. And then this is ceramic, or some people just call them splash and goes because, for obvious reasons. Yeah, so I call them ceramics or splash and goes. If you have the option, go with the ceramic ones because why not? All your newer stones are generally going to be ceramic because they can do it now with the binder.
Is there a price difference?
Generally, you see some really inexpensive clay ones. But it's not necessarily, it's just that they've been making these for a lot longer. And I think stones now get more expensive and they get better. So I'd say your most basic ceramic stone is better than your most basic clay stone. So you generally see these for less. But there are some very expensive clay stones out there too, based on the abrasive. So it is a convenience factor. It doesn't make for a better stone. I've seen prices range, yeah, crazy on both. All right, that is basically it on stones for right now. And then not going to get too deep into knife construction as it relates, but just your German style knife. German knives are about durability, and that's it. Okay. If you're gonna sharpen German knives, even though the steel is a lot softer than the Japanese knives and the American-made knives, you're on the Rockwell hardness scale. You're in the mid-50s on this. But because it's thicker, it's very stainless, a lot of chromium in it. It is not designed for sharpening. These are not fun to sharpen. If you're gonna sharpen these, never go above medium grit. There's no reason to. You're just wasting your time. You can do just a beautiful edge on it that will last you about 3 minutes on a cutting board. So don't polish German knives. Once you get into the Japanese stuff, those start at 58, 59 Rockwell. Most of them are 60 to 62 on the hardness scale and thinner blades. So you can go much finer polish. They will hold that edge. You can go much lower angles to make them sharper because the harder steel can maintain that. In this case, it does not have to be made in Japan. Our knives here at Steelport are 65 Rockwell, which is harder than almost any Japanese knife. And I can do any angles that I would do in a Japanese knife, I can do with these because it's a thin blade and a hard steel. So that's what it comes down to, really. Then again, I have a bunch of construction stuff that again we can get into later if we have time. The only thing that I will mention is if you have a monosteel Japanese knife, a lot of these are going to be sharpened on one side or the other for right hand or left hand use. Some people call that the Japanese style sharpening on it or Japanese style edge. That is not the Japanese style edge. A lot of Japanese knives are laminated, right? There's a sanmai, which is sandwich steel. So you can have stainless on stainless, stainless on carbon. This one you can see exactly how it's constructed, right? So anything that's laminated, Damascus steel knives, which have zero function, it's just for the art of it. Also laminated, it's especially in the Japanese knife world. There are some coreless Damascus out there. You can do whatever you want with those. But any of these laminated knives, they have to be sharpened double-sided. Your German knives, double-sided. Laminated knives, double-sided. A lot of people think that they can, if they bought a Japanese knife, they can put this edge on it, and eventually they cut through the cladding. And then they do have to come see somebody like me to regrind their blade and center that. So if you have a monosteel blade, again, I run single-sided edges on my Steelport knives because they can support that, and that's the kind of edge that I like personally. So so that's basically it on that. And then also your traditional Japanese knives, what's called kataba. These are built completely differently. These are more like a straight razor or a chisel as far as geometry. The idea is the same, again, with all these, anything with an edge. The concept of sharpening is the same. You're creating a burr and removing a burr, but technique is very different on these, and that's a whole other conversation, right? So we're going to set that aside for later unless somebody has questions about it.
That's your sushi knife, would you say?
Correct, yeah. And then, all right, and then we're going to get back to sharpening, and we can anything, and you guys have any questions about these specific? I just want to get to the meat before we talk about the other stuff. So serrated sharpening, there is no satisfactory way for you to do it yourself. So you definitely can't use stones on them. The only thing you can do is you can get a file that matches your serration. It's incredibly labor intensive. And as a home user, you don't really have a way to deburr properly afterwards. So we like everybody to do their own sharpening. Serrated knives are better left to a professional. Generally speaking, serrated knives, it is a consumable product. No, as a knife sharpener, none of us have all the patterns to fit different serrations. So what we do is we shave a piece off the non-serrated side, which reduces the serrations but exposes a fresh burr. And you keep doing that until you don't have a serrated knife anymore, and then you either get a new one and turn it into a slicer or whatever kind of shape it is.
Like you sharpen a chainsaw.
Correct. Yeah. But you need a lot more finesse than you do with the chainsaw. So that's why the results are not that great, right? Shameless plug for Steelport. We are the only company that I know of that resharpens our own serration. So we do free lifetime sharpening. Any Steelport product, just come in, we sharpen it. If I'm here or Nate's here, we do it while you wait. That machine over there, we built it for serrating our bread knives, and then so we create the serrations on that machine. When it comes in for sharpening, we just touch it to the same wheel and then give you a factory edge on that. So that is a huge benefit if you want a quality bread knife that is not a consumable, then Steelport is the only one I know of. And that's, even local companies, Benchmade serrates their knives here. They will not sharpen your serration. They also do free sharpening. Most companies don't do that. That's very unusual. Yeah. All right. So back to sharpening. So like I said, we have control over two things with sharpening, and that is the two important things. So it's teeth and angles, all right? So sharpening at its most basic, theoretically, if you give me a dull knife, it's going to look round, right? If you look at the edge, it's going to be dome, it's going to look rounded, it's going to have a ton of damage. So we are looking to remove steel from each side until both sides meet at as perfect of an apex as we can get there, right? So we're shaving metal from here, rather scratching off metal, right, with our abrasive. We want to create this fine point in there, and that is basically sharpening, right? So I'm just going to kind of go through the questions that people usually ask me, and that will hopefully answer your questions. So you guys already saw that, there's a big debate. Do you sharpen going into the stone or do you use trailing strokes? None of that matters. Okay, you guys already saw that I'm sharpening both directions here. Okay, so we call this, Boy Scout style or Grandma style or no flattering descriptions of this. You can sharpen a knife like this. It's very slow. It's very slow and it is imprecise. So as humans, we're not, we're floppy, we're not machines, right? But we need to be as machine-like as possible when we're sharpening, because consistency is the most important thing to create a crisp edge, okay? If we stay sloppy, then everything's going to get rounded out and we're not going to have a nice edge on it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the variables when we're sharpening, right? And that is every time I pick this up and put it down, it's going to be a slightly different angle, right? Every time I pick it up and put it down, I'm introducing a slightly different angle, whether I go this way or that way, right? So by sharpening this way, I'm eliminating that already, okay? So what I do is whatever your dominant hand is, right? I usually start with that. I hold a knife as if I'm going to use it. If anybody is holding a knife with the hammer grip when they're cutting, don't do that, right? You have no control over this. Proper knife use is, pinch grip, at least these two fingers above the bolster. The rest is just for support. If I'm cutting, I can do any kind of technique, any direction without changing grip, okay? So I can move my wrist and I don't have to change my grip on this. So always ask yourself, could I use my knife right now? Because I see a lot of people, the knife will, the knife will literally turn around in their hand as they're sharpening. Again, reduce those variables. You hold the knife the same way. The rest is all in the wrist. So yeah, so this hand does almost all the work here, right? It determines my angle and it moves the blade. All right. Once I can do this, then I introduce my second hand, and then I'm just putting my fingers right above the edge, and I'm separating into little segments here, and that helps me focus all my energy on a specific part. I'm overlapping those sections, and that helps me also ensure that I'm spending the same amount of time on the entire blade, right? So technique-wise, if I can do this and maintain, you know, I lock my wrists, all the motion is here and here, and then I can maintain a very consistent angle this way, right? And then sharpening is a weird mix of being super rigid, locking my wrist, so I can maintain that, but then also knives have curves on them, right? You know, a lot of them do. So I also need to follow that curve, all right? So this is the basis for all your sharpening. Everything starts with this. If you can do this, you can sharpen, right? So let's say I'm shooting for 15 degrees here. This is 15 degrees, this is 15 degrees. This is not a higher angle. All I'm doing is following that curve, okay? This is 15, this is 15. All I'm doing is I'm lifting my elbow, and that's how I follow that curve, okay? So this hand, whatever hand is holding the knife, is doing all the work. And then this just helps you focus, create little overlapping sections, and so on. So by doing this, I reduce this variable, but I'm also speeding up my sharpening, okay, which also reduces variables. It reduces, if you can sharpen faster, there's less time for you to mess it up, is my theory. Maybe that's not true. But so no matter how good you are with this technique, I'm already halfway there, okay, significantly faster, right? So that answers that as far as like, do you go in or do you go away? Now you will see when I'm sharpening is creating a burr and removing a burr, and we'll talk about that. When I want to remove my burr, I am using this direction, and the reason I do that is because when I go to my strop, I can only go this way. All right, so I'm just maintaining good habits. If I go this way on that stone, then I have to go the other way on this. If I go forward on leather, I'm just going to cut it. So I'm trying to maintain consistency over everything, so I don't have to learn and change techniques. All right. Another thing is we sharpen with both hands. It was a very painful transition for us. While I was cooking, I always sharpen with one hand. Most people sharpen with one hand. They'll sharpen this side, and then they'll flip it over and they'll sharpen this side. These are two completely different techniques. Right? About 10 years ago, myself and my entire crew, we all switched to ambidextrous sharpening. It was very painful because I am definitely not ambidextrous. I can't even brush my teeth with my left hand. But your edges are so much better. And then you don't care if it's single-sided, double-sided, lefty, righty. So then I switch hands and I do the exact same technique, because most people struggle. They can sharpen this way and they struggle as soon as they flip it over, right? So yeah, so that is an important thing. Also, if you guys watch me, again, the movement is here and here. My wrists are locked. If you watch me from here up, you shouldn't be able to tell what I'm sharpening, what part of the process. So I am squared up to my sharpening station. I have elbows in. And then if I'm sharpening this way, if I'm sharpening this way, if I'm deburring, whatever, if I'm switching hands, you shouldn't be able to see anything from here up. I see a lot of people, again, you know, they keep switching grips. If they're sharpening this side, they're throwing, you know, they're standing on this side. They keep switching sides, throwing out elbows, stuff like that. Remove all those variables. Make yourself as machine-like as possible, and then with practice, again, it gets very consistent. Right? So that is kind of how I look at sharpening. It's kind of like when you're cooking; it's just about keeping your station clean. That it is a mindset that will get you better results. So, so yeah, that's as far as technique, right? And then as far as angles, so angles is a it's just, I mean, I cannot overstate the importance of angles. All right. But it is not the actual angle, it is the consistency of your angles. So if I'm shooting for 15 degrees on this, I don't know what 15 degrees is. I'm a freehand sharpener. I don't use any bevel jigs or any fixtures or anything. Okay, so I can approximate it. I'm not going to hit it exactly, and I don't want to hit it exactly. Right? Angles are fluid. It is a poor marketing choice as far as I'm concerned that confused everybody. Again, we didn't get into different knives and constructions, but the two knives that I pick on the most, I pick on the Germans first, and then I pick on Schuns afterwards. Right? And I think it was probably Schun that started out. They were like, okay, we have a 16-degree angle on our knife. You can only sharpen these at 16 degrees. That's what makes it great. Right? And it is not true. Okay, so if you get a matching block set of knives, every knife is going to have a slightly different angle on it based on how thick it is, based on the purpose, and so on. Meat cleaver does not need the same edge as a slicer, and so on. Right? The other thing is angles are fluid. So if two people buy a Schun, use it, love it, it's sharp for them, it came at 16-degree angles, they both come to me for sharpening. So if the first person comes in and his edge is severely damaged, it's all chowdered up, it's chipped, it's rolled, all that, why would I give him back a 16-degree edge? I know that that is too low of an angle for this particular person for how they use their knives, right? So I don't want to go 16 degrees. I'll take their 16, I'll raise it up to 20, I'll still make it sharp, not as sharp, but it will still be sharp, and then it will be a more durable edge for them, and then they're happy, I'm happy, right? Next person comes in, same exact knife, bought it, 16-degree angles, the edge is pristine, just dull, okay? And I look at it and I'm like, I can make this sharper, right? So I'll take their 16 and I'll take it down to 12, right? Because I know that they can handle it because, you know, their edge looks good. So then I'm giving them back a sharper knife, they're happy, I'm happy, so on. So that is how I do it for customers, right? I look at the person, it's an individual thing. And on the same knife, same person, as you are sharpening over the years, there's no way to sharpen without removing steel. Knives are wedges. As I remove steel, I'm dealing with a thicker and thicker edge, so I have to keep reducing my angles in order to get the same edge. Right? So these are fluid. Right? So I look at the customer, I look at the age of the knife. In this case, the customer is you. Right? So when I get a new knife, personally, I always start with the factory edge. And then every sharpening, I lower it a little bit and lower it and lower it and lower it until I start having issues. And by issues, I mean my edge is rolling, chipping, and then I know that that I went too low. And then I'll just raise it up a hair, and I know that that's my sweet spot. That is the lowest angle that I can get away with using. And the lower the angles, the sharper your knife. Okay, it will get sharper, it'll stay sharper longer. Just everything is better about it, except for there is a trade-off between performance and durability, and that is what we're basically talking about here. Okay, is if you want more durable, you'll go higher. If you want more performance, you're going to go lower. All right. So, how do we do that? Right. So if you guys watch us sharpen, we're constantly cleaning up our knife from all the slurry, the swarf that comes out there, and we're looking at our edges. Until you have the experience to kind of see exactly what you do, because we know I use the same stones all the time. I know exactly what they look like, right? Until you do that, we start people off with marker. And you mark your blade, and this is called permanent marker, but it is not permanent on knives. So don't be afraid to do this to your knives. Acetone, nail polish remover, you know, goof off, anything will clean this up. And so I mark my blade, and this makes everything very evident to me. So anything that comes in contact with the stone is going to remove marker, right? So you ask man on the street style interview, what angle does a knife have? Half of them will say 45 degrees, which is incorrect, but I'll go 90, cut that in half, 45. 45 degrees is the combined angle on a German knife, which I think that's where that comes. Yeah, that's where that comes from, but I'll go 90, cut that in half. I'm at 45. I'll do a few test strokes. I don't wipe my blade anymore because it's just going to take off the marker. And then, which I already did in these two spots, but I look at my edge, it looks exactly the same. I didn't take off any marker because the angle was so high, all I did was just take my edge off and didn't expose a bevel on it, right? So I'm going to start lowering it and then look at it. And yeah, so I got some oil or something on my knife because it's not sticking, but you can see the beginning of an edge here, right? Bevel is the part that actually has the edge on it. So clean marker on the sides, and I'm getting a shiny bevel here. I'm going to keep on going a little bit lower because I want a bigger bevel on it. And then it looks the way I want to, but if I look at my heel and my tip, I still see full marker there, okay? And that is what people ignore, is they don't sharpen their entire knife evenly, all right? Which is another reason why we do this technique. But that tells me, you know, I didn't hit here, I didn't hit here. If I keep doing this over and over again, my knife is going to flatten out. And after it flattens out, right, it's not going to rock anymore, then it's going to get a recurve in it. And that is literally how the tournay knife, how the bird's beak knife was invented. They were improperly sharpening their knives, just focusing on the belly. All their paring knives turned into bird's beaks, and they realized that it's good for peeling, you know, vegetables, right? Worked out in that case, does not work out in most cases. So I'm going to make sure that I start at my tip and work my way down and make sure that I go all the way down to my heel, right? And then I can see that I removed steel from this entire part, right? And the reason I marked so high is because if I guess too low, right, then I removed, you know, then I'm thinning, I'm not sharpening, which you may or may not want to do on a knife, but we're trying to sharpen now. And if you're thinning it, you also want to mark it so you have an exact thinning line on there. Or if my technique is bad, if I don't lock my wrist, and I do, this is the main thing that I see people do, is this mashing technique. And then also you're going to see just these random scuffs over there. So this tells you everything that's going on, right? When you guys come to us and show us a knife to look at, so we'll feel your edge and then we'll look at your scratches on here and we can tell what's going on and what's going wrong with your technique, if anything is, right? So I can tell I'm too low, I'm mashing, I'll fix that, I'll go back to proper technique, but I'm not going to know if I fixed it until I remark it, right? And that's, you might want to do it, you know, if your knives are really scuffed up from, you know, scraping them on stones or a honing rod or something, then even if you are familiar with your stones, you might still want to mark them just because you can't tell what's going on if you don't have a clean bevel. That's another thing I like about carbon steel knives, besides, you know, carbon steel sharpens better and quicker, even at the really high hardnesses. Okay, so that's why I demo with carbon steel knives. So we make carbon steel knives. That's why I use carbon steel knives. But what's nice about them is they patina, and they give you a fresh start every time. So I don't need to use the marker because I have a patina blade, and I look at what's shiny and what's patinaed on it. So I'll fix, you know, I'll remark it. Should let this dry a little bit longer. That's why it keeps coming off. But I'll just go back to my sharpening, you know, see, now I'm shiny from here to here, sides are clean, I know my technique is fixed, all right? So that is how you determine your angles. So if you want more finesse, you know, then I'm going to lower it, I'm going to have a wider bevel on it. If I want more durability, I'm going to, you know, raise my angles, have a smaller bevel on it. Simple as that. All right, so it's all done visually, and then eventually, you guys, you know, I can pick up a knife and I can see what angle I need to do with it, and again, everything becomes second nature once you do it for a while. So that is your angles for you. Then another popular question is, how long does it take to sharpen a knife? And it is a how long is a piece of string type of question, right? There are a lot of variables here. So there are no systems that work. I see a lot of people online that they have this, I do 30 strokes on my 400 and then I do 20 strokes on my 1000 and blah, blah, blah. None of that works. I've been trying to standardize this for 30 years now. It does not work. Every knife is different. The same knife is going to be different based on, did you go out drinking last night? Are you tired? Did you have a good lunch? You know, it's every day is different. Every knife is different. So, the answer is until you raise a burr. So again, sharpening at its basic, I start off with a rounded edge that's dull. I scratch steel off one side, cross over, scratch steel off the other side, cross over this way, and that is called the burr. Okay, so burr is something that is created when you don't want, right? That's edge damage, stuff that's just going to fold over, little, you know, edge damage when you use it. But with sharpening, we are trying to create a burr, okay? And it has to be even. That's why I have to feel it that it's even. That's why I, you know, make sure that I sharpen evenly with overlapping strokes. As soon as I feel that burr, which is also called a wire edge, you can just feel it folded over to one side. Then I am done sharpening, right? Everything on the stone, that's all steel, right? It's not marker, it's a steel. So steel has been removed. I do not want to remove any more steel. So if this was a single-sided knife, I'm actually done sharpening. This is a laminated blade, so I'm going to have to sharpen the other side. Another reason why you can't count strokes is everything happens quicker second side. Let's say it did take me 30 strokes to, you know, to raise a burr here. I can raise a burr in one stroke on the back because I created a corner, and cutting through corners is actually quicker, right? So yeah, so I can raise a burr immediately. So I can't count 30 here and count 30 here. I'm going to go through my original burr, and then I'm just canceling myself out every time. All right. So I sharpen here until I raise a burr. Then I'm done. Flip it over. Then I sharpen the other side. My burr is going to flip over immediately. I just want both sides to look the same visually. If I'm going for a 50-50 ratio, it doesn't matter if I'm at, you know, 48-52, it's going to cut the same. All right. So now I took my dull knife, I created a burr on one side, created a burr on the other side, created my apex. My sides have met. It's still not going to cut anything because my burr is still on there. So now I switch techniques, and then I hit the same angle as I sharpened at, but with alternating strokes and no pressure, because I can sharpen like this. So if I do this, if I press hard enough, if I do enough strokes, I'm going to keep on taking off metal. I'm always creating a new burr. I'm never removing my burr. So what I want to do is I just want to flip it over so many times it's going to fall off or get cut off. And then that's my edge. So sharpening looks the same. I do a full sharpening on my coarse, and I do a full sharpening on my medium, and then I do a full sharpening on my polishing if I want to go all three, right? I don't want to leave a burr here and go to sharpening because I'm going to have big chunks of metal on my stone, and it's just going to crunch through. So I do a full sharpening. This should be as sharp as I can get it on a 400. Clean it up, then go up a grit. All your work is done on your first stone, no matter what it is. The rest is just clean up. All I'm doing is I am replacing my 400 grit scratches with 800 grit scratches. Then I'm going to replace my 800 grit scratches with 3,000 grit scratches, and so on. So everything is a lot quicker, right? And then let's say I finished on this stone. When it comes time to, you know, when my knife is dull again, I'm just going to go, I'm either going to just do a little quick kind of going through the motions here, and you can hear how much quieter this is, right? Super, super polished. You know, I'm either just going to go through the motions here and get an edge, or I'm just going to go to my deburring strokes and use it as if I was using a honing rod, basically. And do that. When that stops working, I'll go down to that. When that stops working, I'll go down to that. So technique is exactly the same on here, except that when you get to your polishing stones, they are too fine for you to feel the burr on it. So then it becomes just visual, basically. Yes?
When you're deburring, it seems like that needs to be working to this stroke versus like you're sharpening it back and forth, but the deburring stroke is always one continuous flip.
You can do it. I can go and I can go through the same. So I do go back to one-hand sharpening when I'm deburring, just because it's quicker than alternating, right? For some people, if they have an issue with this, right, I like people to, you mark both sides when you're sharpening. Then when you go to deburr, you mark both sides again. And then when you deburr, your edges should look identical to what you sharpen. That's the goal, right? So I'll switch to one hand just for speed, right? If that doesn't work for you, because it is a different technique, then if I sharpen, right, like this is your base, right? I can go back to just the away stroke, switch hands and do the away stroke, right? Or I can even go just really light, again, same angle, no pressure. That's the only thing that's important, is same angle, no pressure. Not creating any new burrs, but I can go and I can do that. It's just a lot slower. But if switching techniques is confusing to people, if you're not getting the same results, then just go back to what you're doing, and that's the most, it's the most important thing. You cannot over deburr, right? Cannot over strop. You can get finer edges on the same stone, because if you're lightening up, the abrasive is not digging as deep, so you're actually getting a finer stone on that. If I want a coarser edge, I'll leave it deeper, right? And then I like to use a strop, a bent strop, just a piece of leather with a diamond abrasive on it. So I like to kind of clean up my edge at the end. But you guys saw when I wanted to leave it coarse off that, all I did was just take a towel, drag off the burrs real quick. That's it. Otherwise, I like to use a leather strop. But the problem with the leather strop is this will fix all your mistakes, and it doesn't teach you how to sharpen. So this should elevate your sharpening. This shouldn't be a crutch. But yeah, that's what I usually finish on, and then you can go, last thing I'll say about sharpening, and then I'll open it up again, is, going back to honing rods, is, most people sharpen, they'll just keep on doing this until they get lucky and they get an edge, right? That's how most people will use a honing rod too, is they just do enough strokes in order to put an edge on it until they get lucky, right? And then they put it down, but they don't understand what they're doing. So if you understand sharpening, which is, again, all sharpening is maintaining a consistent angle, and you are creating a burr and removing a burr. That's all there is to sharpening. So I can take this is an abrasive, right? And I'll actually hit one side pretty hard, right? And because with honing, you always alternate, right? But I will take this and I will use harder pressure than I would and hit one side until I raise a burr, right? And then when I raise a burr on one side, I'll hit the other side in order to create a burr. Again, flip it over, and then I go to remove the burr, okay? So again, it's a much more efficient, instead of just kind of doing this until you get lucky and then you feel for the burr and everything, I will intentionally create a burr, both sides, and then I go to remove it. And then whatever angle I have here is the angle I have here, and then knives like consistency. So, yeah, I guess I'll open up to questions now. There's a lot more to it, but yeah.
On as far as for a lot of home people here, I see on the front there you've got some of those stones. I look like they've got 2 grits on them.
Yeah.
A lot of us aren't going to have that set up. So there's something that you would recommend for someone that just wants something that they can flip over at home and it'd be like that. Yeah, so I guess I should mention I did bring stones for sale. They're discounted 10% if you guys want. I do have this setup. It's $81, and then I got the full setup with the strop, bridge, all 3 grits, like all that stuff, which is $375. Other than that, I have a full case of every stone you can think of. That's at my shop over there. So if you guys do want stones today, you can do that. The convenience of a double-sided stone is, you are going to use your 1000 grit a lot more than your polishing grit, so you get more sharpening than polishing on it, and then eventually they will even out. If they made them half and half, then you would just go through your sharpening stone before you go through that, then you just have a polishing stone. So these, you save a lot of money going with a double-sided stone. To get this in a single grit is not much more. than that. And then, like I said, there are a million different accessories that you can use. So I like sharpening over water. You don't have to, but you know, these are cheap from the restaurant supply store. I use a sink bridge. You can just, you know, take a piece of wood and put a couple of pegs in it, and you can, you know, bridge it that way. I like these. This is a universal stone stand, so I can take all my different stones, put them in there. This keeps you from slipping and gives you height, which is important when you get into, when your stones get worn. I don't have any knuckle clearance to sharpen on them, so I need to elevate it. So these will give you that, but also you can just, again, you can just take a 2x4, you can just put a wet towel on each side, or these kind of shelf liners or something. So there's workarounds for everything. You don't have to have all these accessories. You don't have to have, you know, these leather straps. They have interchangeable tops, and they're Makita and machine, and they have feet on them. You can also just take a leather and just glue it to a flat surface, and that's your strap, right? So there are workarounds for everything. I'll be happy to talk you guys through them if there's anything you guys want to make yourself at home, or, you know, have a question, kind of what do I need, what do I not need. But yeah, I mean, there are always people that will sell you anything you want to buy, right? But you don't need it. So as long as you have this and a wet towel, you're basically sufficient. And the wet towel is just so it doesn't move on you, you know. And again, one of these. And then I also sometimes I'll just kind of stack. I'll just stack stones. If I need more height, then I'll put a wet towel on that, and I'll stack a stone, and I'll get more height to that. Does that answer?
Yeah, and then I guess follow up to that. When you're sharpening at home, are you just have 1,000 grit stone that you're pretty much just hitting and then you're done?
No. So the advantage of polishing stones, again, if I was using a German knife, I would have 1,000 grit stone, and I would have a honing rod, right? Because I don't want to constantly be hitting my 1,000 grit stone, because I'm taking off steel every time. So I need a way to maintain my edge without taking off steel, but I also don't want to polish it, right? So that's where those come in. I don't have any knives at home that would not take a polish. So the advantage of using a polishing stone is that you can bring back your edge without taking off. So yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing. As soon as you don't like the way it cuts, then I just go to my polishing stone, do a little cleanup on it, literally a minute or two, and then just go back to business. And that's, you know, so I keep ceramic stones at home. They're always ready to use. My favorite combo is I have in this Chaucer line is I have a 600 2000. That's what works for me personally. But again, everybody's different. And but that's what I keep is a flattener, 600, and a 2K.
A lot of good information. They're a little bit 25 minutes over, so I want to respect everybody's time. Now you understand why when Eytan started saying is our 3-hour class becomes 4-hour class. There's a lot of details. And frankly, as a Steelport, that's one of the reasons we have a free lifetime sharpening, because you can 20 years of experience, and it's not the 20 same years. Every year has been more improvement. So a lot of information. Eytan will be around, so feel free to stay around. Again, Eytan has brought in stones here. If you haven't gotten a tour of the factory, it's a good opportunity to get a tour of factory. We have cold brew on tap there, so that's not beer, that's coffee. So you play safe. But thank you for you guys for coming, and thank you, Eytan, for spending the time.
Yeah, really glad to be here. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. If anybody has anything they want to show me, edges you want me to inspect, stones you don't know about, you know, you have a yanagi you want to learn how to sharpen, or shears or razors or any of that stuff, construction, I'm happy. So yeah.
If I just have thermal knives and like a Victorinox, so you're saying I only need about